Morning everyone, welcome to video number 14, The Angel and the Cave. One of my favourite stories, and it's significant because it was the event that started William Branham's public healing ministry that then directly spawned the Voice of Healing revival between 48 and about the end of 56, beginning of 57. And it's a fascinating story. So William Branham's whole life had been marked by supernatural events, is probably the best way to say it. From time to time, he would have these open visions where he would see a particular event happening, people in particular places, and then he would, in the vision, pray for someone, they get healed, and then later on he would find himself in that exact circumstance and people would get healed. But he only ever had a grade 7 education. He was dirt poor missionary Baptist pastor in Jeffersonville, Indiana, and supplementing his income basically by being a ranger and, who's a woodsman, outdoorsman. And the elders in his denomination basically said to him, look, Bill, you've got to get rid of that. That's demonic. God doesn't do that no more, And he trusted them because he only had a grade 7 education. So, but these things kept happening and he kept seeing really good fruit from it. And it was tearing him up inside, And on May the 7th, 1946, so just after the end of World War II, he was so disturbed by all this, he said to his wife, look, that's it, I'm going to go up to the cave and have it out with the Lord. And he'd found this cave when he was wandering around the outdoors, and that was his place where he would go and pray and spend some time with the Lord in sort of privacy, drawing away outside the camp, if you like. And so he went up to the cave and he was just crying out to God, Lord, why would you let me have these demonic things? I don't want demonic things. You've got to take this from me, Lord. And you can just picture the father sitting back like, yeah, I'll wait. And after a couple of hours, he sort of wore himself out and, he was just sort of sitting there in the cave and in the darkness. And all of a sudden, this thought dropped into his head. What if those guys are wrong? And immediately his brain was just flooded with all these Bible stories of healings, miracles, visions, dreams, And he basically said, well, Lord, if it is you, I do want it, but you've got to make it clear to me. And then all of a sudden, this pinprick of light appears in the air in the cave. And he's sort of looking at it a bit like Moses at the burning bush, like, huh? And as he's looking at it, it's getting bigger and bigger, like a swirling ball of fire, and eventually gets large, and the angel of the Lord steps out of the light. And like every angelic appearance in the Bible, don't be afraid. Those of you who are praying for angels to show up, you need to take that on board. And the angel said to him, I've called you to take divine healing to the nations. If you are faithful when you pray, if you're sincere when you pray and can get the people to believe you, no disease will stand before you, not even cancer. And Branham said, but Lord, I've only got a grade 7 education. You said I'm to go to the nations. Who's going to listen to me? And the angel said, well, I'm going to give you 2 gifts. The first one, you'll take a person's right hand in your left, and you will know by the marks on your skin what the problem is and how to pray. And the second, he said, if you're faithful in that, it will come to pass that you'll discern what's wrong with someone by vision alone. And yeah, so the angel goes away. Branham sort of staggers back into town. What do I do with this? I'm supposed to go to the nations. How do you make that happen? I've got no money. And he thinks, well, I need to go to the post office and pick up my paycheck. So he's heading off that direction, and he sees a man has just got off the intercity bus and is looking at a piece of paper in his hand and sort of looking around like he's lost and doesn't know where he is. He goes in, gets his paycheck, comes out, and the guy's still there. So he went over and he said, "Sir, look, I'm a local ranger. You look a bit lost. Can I help you?" And the man said, "Well, this is going to sound a bit weird," he said, "but God spoke to me in a dream last night and told me to get on the bus to Jeffersonville, Indiana, and look for a guy called Branham who'll pray for me so I can be healed." Talk about set up. So he prayed for him in the street. The guy gets healed. And this keeps happening over the next couple of weeks, I think. You know, a number of people just, the Lord spontaneously has them show up, and he's told them in the night. And eventually a pastor from St. Louis, which was about 3 hours away, hears about it, and his little daughter is in crippling pain, can't move, something in her back. And he asks Branham, "Look, will you come and pray for her?" And he says, "Oh, sure." Jumps in his car, drives 3 hours to get over there. And he's just waiting on the Lord, you know, what do I do? And eventually gets the vision, goes inside and waits till everyone's in the right position, walks over and presses on the girl's back. "Thus says the Lord." And vertebra drops back into place. All the pain's gone. She's completely healed. And the pastor then says, "Look, you know, this is incredible. We need to do some meetings," and organizes for Branham to come back and do a week of healing meetings. So they get hold of a tent that comfortably seats, I think, around 300 people. And, you know, they would have had about 150 people on the first night. And so Branham was just being obedient to what he'd been told. So he'd take the person's right hand in his left, and he would get these bumps or a pattern on his skin. And, okay, that's this disease. He'd pray for it. They'd get healed. The bumps would go away. "Oh, you're healed." And they'd be healed. And some of the guys who traveled with him said they got so good at recognizing the patterns, they'd just sort of look across and go, "Oh, yeah, that's what that is." But yeah, this meeting just blows out. And these 150 odd people there the first night, they go out, they get on the telephone, start ringing everybody they know. And so the crowd just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger every night. They end up taking the walls off the tent because there's so many people showing up. I think the last night they had something like 2,500 people around a tent that comfortably seated about 300. And people were just so aware God's doing something here. And these other pastors had come and said, "Look, we want you to come to our city, and we want you to come to our city." And that is how his public ministry began. The Lord ordained it, the Lord set it up, and the Lord brought it about. He didn't really have to do anything but show up and walk through the open doors when they presented. And there's a very important lesson there, because so many people, "Oh, I'm called to do X, Y, and Z," and they'll go out and they'll manipulate and push and promote themselves and do all the wrong things to try and do what they were shown in the vision, not realizing that many are called, few are chosen, and that just because God's shown you something doesn't mean it's the right time. And as I've said before, remember the lesson of King David. Even though he was anointed king, he refused to lift a finger to make it happen. God had to do it God's way. Unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain. And we've got to learn that. Anyway, so Branham's ministry went absolutely ballistic. Back then, there was nobody to come along and say, "Hey, Bill, when you do meetings, this is how you arrange it." They were literally making it up as they went. And it sort of ended up, he was getting so tired because he would literally try and pray for everybody himself. He was just burning out. And there was one meeting in, I think it was Jonestown, Alabama, which of course is notorious now. And he basically stood up on the first night and said, "Look, I'm going to take some time off to rest after this meeting. So I want to minister to everybody who's here who wants prayer this week." And the prayer line went for 8 days straight. He would eat at the pulpit. He would literally lay down and sleep and wake up, and the next person's still patiently waiting their turn in the prayer line. He'd sneak out to the toilet, come back, off he'd go again. And on the final night, they snuck him out to the railway station to meet his wife, who'd come in, and she was going to drive back with him afterwards. and they could not drive back to the auditorium. The streets were so jam-packed for 5 blocks around the auditorium, they had to leave the car and start walking. And of course, people didn't recognize him back then. So he's going in through the car park. One of the ambulance drivers who'd been ferrying people from the hospital to the meetings saw him and called him over and said, look, this guy's just died in the back of my ambulance. So Branham prays for him. The guy's raised from the dead. A crowd starts to notice and come over. He sneaks off the other way, runs into a blind black girl who's like, Daddy, Daddy, where are you? Daddy, Daddy. And he goes over and says, Miss, can I help you? And she said, oh, we've come all this way and because I need healing and we can't even get into the meeting and now I've lost my daddy and I can't find my way to get the bus home. And so he prays for her right then in the car park and she gets her sight back. And so this is the sort of thing that was going on in 1946 into 1947. And of course, by the beginnings of 1948, other people had started to be praying for healing, doing healing meetings. A. Allen had been seeking the Lord for power, and Jack Coe and Oral Roberts. And so the Voice of Healing magazine first launched in April 1948. And it was basically set up to record Branham's ministry. And again, he was burning out at the same time and ended up taking about 6 months off. And the guys who'd set up the magazine, Gordon Lindsay et al., they basically said, well, we need to start covering other people as well. We've got all these subscribers. We need content. And so they started talking about some of these other guys and what was going on in their meetings. And that's really how the Voice of Healing revival began. There's so much more to be said. The actual magazines, Voice of Healing magazines, are on the Ancient Wells website. There's a whole section, Voice of Healing magazines, and they're all scanned. You can go in, just click on them and read the magazine from back then that chronicled the revival. And some of those healing testimonies will blow your socks off, to use one of my mother's favourite phrases. So, The Angel in the Cave. Hope you enjoyed that story. Hope it builds your faith and encourages you to keep seeking the Lord for what he wants to do through you.